Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephania Cox. Here are today's top stories. Another deadly weekend in Chicago. President Trump says he's going to send law enforcement officers to the city in response to the violence. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo demands that the Chinese regime stop the persecution of Falun Gong. An information center for the practice says his statement will inspire millions of Chinese people in pursuit of their freedom. A BBC interview with the Chinese ambassador to the UK goes viral after he's shown a video apparently depicting forced detainment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. Virus cases continue to spike in Florida, but some are questioning the state's virus reporting after a motorcycle death was temporarily attributed to infection. And New York City is entering phase 4 of reopening today, but Governor Cuomo warns New Yorkers that if they don't follow the rules, he will bring back the restrictions. The FBI says Roy Den Hollander is now dead after being identified as the main suspect in a shooting. The attack killed the son and injured the husband of federal judge Esther Salas. Roy Den Hollander, the man identified as the shooter, was a lawyer, a self-described champion for men's rights, and what he called an anti-feminist. Over the weekend, a gunman allegedly dressed as a FedEx driver came to the Salas' home and opened fire when the door was opened. Judge Salas was appointed by President Barack Obama. She's seated in New Jersey and has been involved in a number of high-profile cases. And local media say Chicago's weekend violence surpassed last year's, with 70 shot and 10 dead. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on those numbers and the mayor's response to President Trump's offer to help quell the violence.
70 people shot, including 10 deaths in another violent Chicago weekend. That's according to local reports, and among those shot, 10 children. President Trump says he's going to send law enforcement officers to cities dealing with high crime, including Chicago.
How about Chicago? Would you say they need help after this weekend? Do you know the numbers? Did you hear the numbers? Many shot, many killed. All run by the same liberal Democrats.
But the mayor of Chicago, like the Democratic mayor of Portland, says she's concerned about federal agents coming into the city.
Well, I have great concerns about that, particularly given the track record in the city of Portland. I spent a lot of time yesterday talking with the mayor of Portland to get a sense of what's happened there. We don't need federal agents without any insignia taking people off the street and holding them, I think, unlawfully.
Instead, the mayor says the president can work to get illegal guns off of the street and to stop the inflow of guns coming from other states. She suggested that Trump fund the ATF, a government agency focused on reducing violent crime. Trump didn't specify how many or what kind of law enforcement officers he would send to these cities. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
President Trump says he's trying to help Portland as federal officers crack down on riots. The city has seen months of unrest with federal buildings under attack, arson, and clashes with police.
President Trump says the White House is trying to help Portland, not hurt it. Writing on Twitter, he said, "Anarchists and agitators have taken control, and action must be taken to protect the people and federal property." Federal law enforcement was sent in last week after months of protests and riots in the city. But the move triggered backlash from the city's mayor and Oregon's governor. Meanwhile, over the weekend, rioters broke into a Portland Police Association building and set it on fire. Portland's police bureau also reported fires being set outside the building, though officers were able to extinguish them. Separately, hundreds formed a crowd near a federal building downtown. Activists dismantled the steel fence around a federal courthouse hours after it was put up, and more fires were lit.
There we go.
Smoke could be seen among the crowd, which could be due to the use of tear gas by police or smoke bombs set off by rioters. Officers declared the protest outside Portland Police Building a riot due to its violent nature. They pursued those who had committed the arson and break-in, leading to a clash between police and rioters. Portland's police bureau says it didn't use CS gas, a component used in tear gas. People in the crowd hurled projectiles, including rocks, smoke bombs, and paint-filled balloons, injuring some officers. Some members of the crowd were arrested. Democratic Mayor Ted Wheeler called on the Trump administration to pull back, but admitted that violent anarchists were operating amid Black Lives Matter protests. Wheeler is also the police commissioner. Portland officials are trying to get federal officers to stop making arrests and ultimately leave the city.
Another demonstration in Seattle turned into a riot on Sunday. The crowd broke windows at the city's East Precinct police building. Businesses were also broken into and looted amid other violent activity. 24 officers were injured. And in Berkeley, California, traffic stops are being taken away from police officers. The city council intends to give the job to unarmed city workers instead. NTD's Don Tran spoke with a former New York police captain on how effective this new reform could be.
Traffic stops. Commonly known as pulling someone over, it's one of the most iconic jobs police officers undertake on a daily routine. But in Berkeley, the city council is planning on handing over this role to civilian city workers. Berkeley's Mayor Jesse Arreguin said in a council meeting last week that people have wrongly equated more police with safety for far too long. The police reform is intended to address the issue of racial profiling as well as the shooting of unarmed minorities. Robert Brown, criminal attorney and former NYPD captain, says it's a noble goal but doubts it will be effective.
If their goal is to eliminate racial profiling, first of all, what's to say that the people that they hire to write traffic tickets don't racially profile?
Some say that by having unarmed personnel conduct traffic stops, the interaction cannot escalate into violence. Brown agrees that there will be no escalation, but civilian workers will be in serious danger.
It's only escalation if the police have a gun also, right? If the traffic agent, the unarmed traffic agent that they envision doesn't have a gun, then they're just going to get attacked, assaulted, potentially killed. There's no escalation. They're just going to be victims.
Replacing officers with city workers is part of the city's broad overhaul of its law enforcement. The city council has set a goal of cutting the police budget by 50%, and some have pledged to make the use of police force as restrictive as possible. Brown says these changes, specifically with conducting traffic stops, can make things worse by emboldening criminals.
You don't have the authority to do a traffic stop. So even though they run a red light right in front of a uniformed police officer in a marked car, they won't be able to pull a car over. And that's kind of crazy to me.
The reform plan also seeks to stop armed officers from responding to mental health calls and doing homeless outreach. Brown suggests for more training and that all officers wear body cameras to deter them from abusing their power.
The nation's highest court says felons will still have to pay certain fees before they regain the right to vote in Florida. The ruling comes after an attempt to remove a law ahead of next month's primaries.
A Florida law requiring felons to pay all fees, fines, and restitution they owe before regaining the right to vote is still standing. That's after the Supreme Court ruled to keep it in place. The move will prevent some voters from registering in Florida's August primary and possibly in the November election. Justice Sonia Sotomayor described the mandate as a voter paywall. She says the order prevents thousands of voters from participating in Florida's primary election simply because they are poor. But lawyers for Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis argued that removing the law would irreparably harm the state. They said repealing it would allow hundreds of thousands of ineligible voters to take part in the upcoming elections, one of which is only a month away. The case is tied to a 2018 initiative where voters ended the permanent voting ban for felons who've served their time. Prior to that, convicted felons weren't allowed to vote in Florida at all. Earlier this month, the left-leaning Southern Poverty Law Center, along with other organizations representing felons, asked Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to set aside the stay. Access to the key battleground state's ballot box has sparked widespread controversy. That's because political races are often decided by thin margins, so the case could have huge ramifications on this year's results. According to the Associated Press, the state has an estimated total of nearly 800,000 disenfranchised felons. Many of them are black and presumably Democrats.
Joe Biden is facing pressure to choose a running mate. He has already committed to selecting a woman. Here's how the selection process looks so far.
Joe Biden is facing pressure from contending groups as he prepares to interview a short list of women, one of whom will become his running mate. Biden already committed to choosing a woman to run as his vice president. He expects the background vetting process to conclude around July 24th. He would then interview each finalist before making a decision by August. The women under serious consideration include Senators Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and Tammy Duckworth. Online betting site Predicted puts Harris's odds of being picked at 41%, far higher than any of the other candidates on the list. Harris was elected to the Senate in 2016. Before that, she served as Attorney General for California. She ran for president too, but ended her campaign in December. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is another Democratic senator who ran for president at the same time. Duckworth was an Army reservist for 23 years. She also served in the House of Representatives for 2 terms before her election to the Senate. Under Obama, she was appointed Assistant Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Another candidate is Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Bottoms recently announced her positive test for the CCP virus. She was also sued by the Georgia governor over her mask policy for the city. Other candidates include Congresswomen Val Demings and Karen Bass, former U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice, and New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Biden has received pressure to select a black running mate in light of recent protests. Frontrunner Harris is half black, but has struggled with support from the black community. The only white candidate on Biden's list is Warren.
Up next, New York City is in phase 4 of its reopening, but Governor Cuomo says he'll bring back the restrictions if places like bars keep filling up. That and more when we return.
The coronavirus outbreak is the latest wake-up call.
U.S. Senator Ben Sasse put it plainly, the Chinese Communist Party has lied, is lying, and will continue to lie about coronavirus to protect the regime.
In 5 to 10 years, we'll have virtually no manufacturing capacity left for generic drugs. And again, this is 90% of our medicines.
And the world should know, if Hong Kong falls, the whole world falls, okay? Because the Chinese Communist Party is the existential risk of humanity, period.
Since the CCP took power, 80 million people have died from its policies and political campaigns.
They're using our institutions and our norms and our values against us in ways that we hadn't necessarily envisioned towards their own authoritarian agenda.
From the party's great firewall in cyberspace, or to that great wall of sand in the South China Sea.
More repression, more unfair competition, more predatory economic practices, indeed a more aggressive military posture as well.
If we do not meet this threat now, it's going to define our century.
New York's Statue of Liberty is open again as part of a new step in the phased reopening plan. NTD's Melina Wisecup has more updates about the changing situation in New York.
New York is now in phase 4 of its reopening, which means that tourist sites like here at the Statue of Liberty can now welcome visitors again. But on its first day of reopening, it doesn't look like many visitors are taking advantage of it just yet. And some tourists told us they're trying to stay as safe as possible while they're visiting the city.
We have a mask, we follow the rules. What's there to be afraid of? So it's all up here.
But here we're all trying to wear gloves so we don't touch anything and keeping the masks on at all times. I guess trying to avoid large groups of people.
Along with outdoor entertainment, schools are also a part of Governor Cuomo's phase 4 reopening. Only schools in areas with less than 5% infection rate can continue with in-person classes this fall, according to Cuomo's most recent guidance. Also included in this next step of reopening is media production, and professional sports can start up again, that is, without fans. But Governor Cuomo warned that if people don't follow the rules, he'll lock things back down again.
If it happens, I'll tell you what's going to happen. We're going to have to roll back the opening plan.
He pointed out that crowds of people were seen gathering and drinking at bars over the weekend, and it's not the first time that's happened. He says police are not enforcing the law, and that has to change, or else, he says, he will intervene. Reporting from New York, Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Phase 4 is the last phase of the state's outlined guidance. Right now, it's not clear when New York will be fully reopened again. And cases of the CCP virus in Florida are surging, over 10,000 per day for 6 consecutive days. But some of the state's data reporting is being called into question after a motorcycle death was temporarily counted as a virus death. Our reporter Kevin Hogan spoke with a physician to learn about the types of tests and what counts as a death from the virus.
Florida is being hit hard by the CCP virus, with the number of infections breaking the state's records and daily new infections over 10,000 for the 6th day in a row. The state's death rate is near the median deaths per capita throughout the U.S., with just over 22 deaths per 100,000 people. The CDC defines a death from the virus as someone who dies with COVID-19 as the underlying cause of death. Yet a man who died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend was listed as a COVID death, which Dr. Wachter, a University of California professor, calls into question.
To say that a motorcycle driver in an accident died of COVID seems a little bit out there. On the other hand, we know that COVID can cause cognitive difficulties and other brain problems. So I guess it's impossible to say that his death had nothing to do with his COVID. But I think in most regions you would not classify that as a COVID-related death.
Florida has since removed the death from the motorcycle accident from the COVID fatality list. There are 2 tests for the virus. One is a nasal swab that tells if you have the virus right now. The other is an antibody test that tells if your body has already fought off the infection. In Florida, the percentage of people testing positive for the virus, or positivity rate, is going up. But Dr. Wachter says 40% of the people who have COVID feel fine. He also says he is nearly certain that if you've had COVID, you probably won't get it again.
I'm close to 100% because, given that there have been millions of infections so far, if it were common that people could get another episode of COVID, we would have heard of many, many cases. We've not heard of a single credible case here.
Dr. Wachter reports the virus patients are twice as likely to die if they are in an overburdened hospital. And 45 hospitals in Florida have no available beds in the intensive care unit. 9 of those hospitals are in the Miami area. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Coming up, BBC interviewed the Chinese ambassador to the UK regarding the forced detainment of Uyghur Muslims. Find out why the interview went viral. And Chinese authorities admit the famous Three Gorges Dam has moved, leaked, and distorted. The comments came the same day the dam saw its biggest flood this year. That and more when we return.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
In China, something can be illegal, but still in common practice. For example, bribery, or intellectual property theft, or Uber.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people and counting. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face.
Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? It's starring me.
It's more and more obvious that China is having a major influence on the U.S.
Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? 中国揭秘. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the only show on TV or the internet. It will be the sole source of edutainment worldwide. Have you heard of China Uncensored? Yeah, You actually have? He's heard of China Uncensored.
I love China Uncensored.
Questions have been going around for years about forced detention of Uyghur Muslims in China's Xinjiang region. China's ambassador to the UK was shown such footage, and his response has gone viral online. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
Drone footage purportedly showing Uyghur Muslims bound and blindfolded has gone viral on social media. The video allegedly shows them being led onto a train with an unknown destination. The footage is believed to have been taken somewhere in Xinjiang, an autonomous region in northwestern China that's home to the ethnic minority group. In response, the BBC's Andrew Marr invited China's ambassador to the UK, Liu Xiaoming, onto his show. Marr asked Liu to describe what was happening in the image. Liu responded by asking Marr if he had ever visited Xinjiang, adding that the region is one of the most beautiful places in China. To which Marr responded, "That is not beautiful coverage." When Marr said the footage had been authenticated by Western intelligence and Australian experts, Liu dismissed the claims and tried to change the subject. Brushing off the allegation, he said Western intelligence has made false claims against China before. He also used the Western statement that 1 million Uyghurs have been detained in China as an example. Marr then pointed out that according to the Chinese regime's own statistics, that area's Uyghur population has fallen by over 80% from 2015 to 2018. Liu adamantly refused the figures and said they weren't correct. A report from Washington-based think tank Jamestown Foundation said the Chinese Communist Party uses forced sterilization and other measures to control the Uyghur population. The 32-page report compiled by China expert Adrian Zenz also states that the Uyghur population fell by over 80% between 2015 and 2018 and declined further in 2019. Notably, these kinds of population control measures meet the criteria cited in the UN Convention on Genocide. As for Liu's dismissal of the 1 million Uyghurs being detained, there's been wide media coverage on the subject. Leaked documents seen by BBC confirm 1 million Uyghurs were locked up and forced to undergo ideological re-education. And according to the U.S. State Department, that number could be closer to 2 million. Likewise, CNN obtained redacted government documents from China showing records of detainees inside internment camps in Xinjiang. While Chinese authorities denied those claims at first, they changed their statement after repeated public reports surfaced. Now they call the camps vocational education centers. Even members of the Uyghur ethnic group that aren't imprisoned can't seem to escape. China has repeatedly asked other countries to return them to mainland China after they were found trying to seek asylum overseas. In 2015, Thailand returned nearly 100 Uyghurs to China, and in 2017, Egypt returned 24. They have since disappeared upon arriving back in China.
After the Three Gorges Dam saw its highest level of flooding this year, authorities admitted the dam has been distorted, leaked, and moved. The next day, officials downstream blasted open a dam to release the excess water. NTD's Juliet Song has more.
Over the weekend, China's famous Three Gorges Dam, located on the Yangtze River, saw its most severe flooding yet this year. The same day, authorities admit the dam has moved, leaked, and distorted. This past Saturday, a new round of flooding hit the dam, with incoming water reaching over 60,000 cubic meters per second. That's twice the rate of the next most powerful flood. On the same day, Chinese state media Xinhua reported the dam has moved, leaked, and distorted. But the report didn't give out specific numbers, instead emphasizing that all major parameters are within normal range. Together with heavy rain, the increased water from the dam has also sent the water level downstream soaring. That led authorities from Anhui province to blast open a local dam during the wee hours of the morning in effort to elevate the pressure. Chinese officials used the same tactic back in 1998, the country's worst flooding in recent decades. On Monday morning, the water level inside the Three Gorges Dam was still above its flood warning level. That's as it may be hit with another round of flooding on Tuesday. While the Yangtze River flooding persists, another major river, located further north, is also getting overwhelmed. That leaves the region between the two rivers at risk, which happens to be one of China's most important economic centers. Juliet Song, NTD News.
Over 30 U.S. lawmakers and officials, as well as over 600 lawmakers worldwide, put pen to paper to denounce a 21-year-long persecution. They condemned the Chinese regime for its crackdown on practitioners of Falun Gong. July 20th marks the 21st year since the CCP began its persecution of the spiritual group.
Dozens of officials and U.S. lawmakers from both parties are expressing solidarity with Falun Gong practitioners and thanking them for advocacy of religious freedom. The spiritual group has faced imprisonment and torture in China. Last year, an independent tribunal in London found that the Chinese regime has and continues to harvest the organs of Falun Gong adherents and sell them for profit. China's state media initially promoted the practice for its effectiveness in improving health. But former communist leader Jiang Zemin launched the persecution in 1999, when the spiritual group became so popular that the number of people practicing exceeded that of Communist Party membership. In a video statement, the commissioner at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom called on the Chinese regime to stop its assaults on the practice.
Communist China is the greatest threat to religious freedom in the world. No one else is even close.
He applauded the spiritual group's anti-persecution efforts and called for the U.S. government to conduct an investigation into the allegations of forced organ harvesting in China.
I want to thank all of you for your tireless advocacy on behalf of religious freedom. I look forward to continuing to work with you to ensure that all of the citizens of China can one day enjoy freedom and worship in peace.
U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom Sam Brownback also issued a video statement saying the CCP is at war with faith, but it's a war they will not win.
May next year be not the 22nd anniversary that we recognize the persecution, but the first year we recognize the freedom of the people of Falun Gong and everybody throughout China to practice their faith freely.
14 Democrat and 15 Republican lawmakers sent letters to show solidarity. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual discipline that includes meditative exercises and a set of moral teachings based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. At its peak of popularity, the discipline was practiced by around 70 million people before the persecution. Outside the U.S., over 600 lawmakers from 30 countries issued a joint statement calling on the CCP to immediately stop its brutal campaign against Falun Gong. Bitter Winter, a magazine focusing on religious freedom in China, called the amount of the international support unprecedented, notwithstanding the fake news spread by the CCP.
Her name is Zhongfang Yang. She passed away on July the 2nd, 2002. She was 37 years old.
According to the Falun Dafa Information Center, more than 4,000 practitioners are confirmed to have died from torture. But due to the difficulty of obtaining information from China, the center said the true death toll is likely to be many times higher. And the brutality continues today. At least 27 Falun Gong practitioners were persecuted to death this year by May. 10 of them died during detention at a local police station or prison. Penny Joe, NTD News.
And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo today also demanding that the regime stop its persecution of the spiritual meditation practice. Pompeo said 21 years of persecution of Falun Gong practitioners is far too long and it must end. This time last year, he welcomed a survivor of a Chinese labor camp who was tortured for her faith in Falun Dafa to speak at the U.S. Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom. The Falun Dafa Information Center says Pompeo's statement and long-standing support will inspire millions of Chinese people to continue their pursuit of freedom. And the UK Foreign Secretary also says he's deeply concerned about the Chinese regime persecuting people of faith after he was urged to consider sanctions on human rights abusers. Our UK correspondent Jane Werrell has more.
This traditional Chinese meditation practice is banned in China.
Falun Gong is a practice of gentle exercises and meditation, a bit like Tai Chi or yoga. It also has teachings based on truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. So it's a mind and body practice.
For 21 years, practitioners of Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, have been tortured for their belief in China. China's handling of the pandemic and Beijing imposing a new repressive security law on Hong Kong has put China's human rights violations in a starker light at the core of the UK government.
China stands condemned in the World Court of Rights in relation to their abuse against Christians, against Uyghur Muslims. And this week is the 21st anniversary of the persecution of the Falun Gong, whose followers have been subject to commercial organ harvesting with the knowledge.
He urged the UK to sanction human rights abusers who persecute Falun Gong practitioners. The Foreign Secretary is concerned, though he says the challenge will be to establish the evidence and pinpoint the individuals responsible.
But we are deeply concerned about the persecution of Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Falun Gong practitioners and others on the grounds of religion or belief in China, including, I think, with the new national security legislation, the risk that that grip only gets tighter.
Disturbing crimes highlighted by the China Tribunal held in London last year unanimously concluded that forced organ harvesting has happened in China on a substantial scale and still continues. They found the main source of organs came from practitioners of Falun Gong.
We in this forum and here at the House of Commons will be their voice. Will be their voice for the voiceless, a voice for those who are being abused verbally and physically. Many other MPs are particularly moved by what is happening to the Falun Gong.
A Foreign Office minister said during a June debate that the government takes the reports on organ harvesting very seriously.
Falun Gong practitioners, because of the healthy lifestyle that they lead, they don't drink, they don't smoke, so their organs are generally healthy, and so they've been targeted for the barbaric practice of forced organ harvesting.
At this peaceful protest outside the Chinese embassy in London, practitioners are free to protest and raise awareness of 21 years of persecution. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
Coming up, a new virus relief bill is being negotiated. President Trump says he wants a payroll tax cut included in it, and he's laid down a hardline consequence in case it's not there. And a new report says global real estate investment dropped massively in the first half of 2020, but certain sectors in the industry are expected to outperform the others. More on that when we return.
Years of Chinese music and dance in one night.
Just so inspiring. It makes me want to go dance.
It's breathtaking, brilliant.
It's out of this world.
This week on America Uncovered, U.S.-China tensions have never been higher. But there's more to come as the U.S. sends warships through the South China Sea. Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on NTD America.
Hello there. Doesn't it feel like we're moving further away from the very values that our republic was built upon? And the media in our country have just been adding fuel to the flame, which is why you need to try The Epoch Times. It's pure, honest journalism that's restoring traditional values and reports the news with no spin, no hidden agendas, and no false narratives. So if you want to know the truth about the FISA abuse that took place during the 2016 election, or how socialist and communist ideologies have been infiltrating our society, or how the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led to this global pandemic, and so much more, then you need to try The Epoch Times. And for a limited time, you can try the paper yourself for a full month for just $1, and we'll send you a very special gift. A 58-page magazine that investigates the truth behind the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up of the virus. So go to readepoch.com, try The Epoch Times, get your free gift, and stay truly informed.
President Trump says he wants to see a payroll tax cut in the next virus relief bill. And if it's missing, he might not sign it.
President Trump said the next COVID-19 relief bill must contain payroll tax cut provisions. Otherwise, he may refuse to sign it into law. Trump made the remarks on Sunday's interview with Chris Wallace on Fox News. Wallace also asked Trump about liability protection for businesses and other entities resuming operations amid the pandemic. Trump said we do need protections because businesses are going to get sued just because someone walked in. You don't know where this virus comes from. They'll sit down at a restaurant. They'll sue the restaurant. The guy's out of business. The battle in Congress over the new COVID-19 aid bill began on Friday as Republicans put the finishing touches on draft provisions. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell provided a draft to Reuters. It shows Republicans are looking to grant liability protections to a wide range of entities, including government agencies, schools, colleges, and businesses. The draft shows that the liability protections would sunset at the end of a federal COVID-19 emergency declaration or 2024, whichever comes later. McConnell also said he hopes the next bill will not cost more than $1 trillion, but leading Democrats have vowed to fight for more, somewhere in the range of $3 trillion.
The pandemic is disrupting real estate deals around the world. Savills says investment fell by 33% in the first half of 2020. The Asia-Pacific region took the biggest hit. It's down 45% from the year before. Investment dropped by 36% in the Americas, and it dropped 19% in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Savills says investors are waiting for market clarity. Investment is expected to stay well below pre-pandemic levels for the rest of the year. But its analysts expect certain sectors, including logistics and residential, to outperform the others. And scientists at AstraZeneca and Oxford University have successfully completed the first human trials for an experimental COVID vaccine. The results seem positive.
AstraZeneca's experimental COVID-19 vaccine has shown promise in its early-stage human trials. It was found to be safe and produced an immune response in clinical testing in healthy volunteers, data showed on Monday, with the strongest response seen in people who received 2 doses. Director of the Jenner Institute at Oxford, Adrian Hill, hopes 1 million doses might be manufactured by September. But that early estimate might be an underestimate, depending on how quickly late-stage trials can be completed.
If we can get an effective vaccine, we will be able to vaccinate very large numbers of people because we can manufacture this vaccine at scale. And that will allow people to get back to normal life, hopefully, after they are vaccinated.
They have signed agreements with governments around the world to supply the vaccine, should it prove effective and gain regulatory approval. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson described the early-stage clinical trial data as very positive.
U.S. drug maker Pfizer and German biotech firm BioNTech also report data from their experimental vaccine trial. The results show it was safe and prompted an immune response. Another vaccine candidate by a Chinese company and China's military research unit also reportedly showed an immune response in their human trial. And up next, following Australia and Canada, Britain has suspended its extradition treaty with Hong Kong. And another China-based company, TikTok, might face more scrutiny because of its proximity to China's intelligence service. More on that after the break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。 我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
Over to Europe. Britain has decided to suspend its extradition treaty with Hong Kong immediately and indefinitely. Prime Minister Johnson says Britain has to think about human rights. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
Thanks. Welcome to NTD UK, bringing you UK and European news. The UK has suspended its extradition deal with Hong Kong in response to Beijing's new security law there.
An extradition deal takes effect if someone in the UK is suspected of a crime in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong authorities can ask the UK to hand them over to face justice, and vice versa.
And the government has decided to suspend the extradition treaty immediately and indefinitely.
According to Raab, the UK will not reactivate the deal before there are clear and robust measures preventing it from being misused under the new national security law. The UK fears that people extradited to Hong Kong could be sent on to China.
We have to think about the human rights, the rights of the people of Hong Kong to participate in democratic processes, and people here from Hong Kong and how those changes affect them.
The UK has also extended its arms embargo to Hong Kong, which has been applied to mainland China since 1989. This comes as tension is already rising between the UK and China. China has already threatened to retaliate over Britain's Huawei ban.
And Chinese telecom Huawei is revealed to have secretly bought a stake in a British company that uses artificial intelligence to spot criminals in crowds. According to The Times, Huawei Technologies Cooperative, an offshoot of Huawei, bought a 20% stake in Vision Semantics in the last 2 years. Vision Semantics has developed technology to spot an individual in crowd using not just their face, but their clothing, height, and any objects they are carrying. Vision said the technology has been used by police forces around the world. The technology has potentially sinister applications, given that China, Huawei's homeland, has a record of mass surveillance and widespread repression. More Chinese tech. Leading UK lawmakers claim TikTok is as dangerous as Huawei is to Britain. TikTok is a very popular social media video sharing app owned by Beijing-based company ByteDance. In the Times today, one lawmaker raised the issue of proximity to Chinese intelligence services. There are real serious concerns as big as with Huawei over the role that they play. Other parliamentarians echoed this. TikTok denies the allegations, saying data is stored in the US. Proposals have been floated to build a global headquarters for TikTok in London. India has banned TikTok, and the US Secretary of State says America may follow. Moving on, a group representing UK airlines is calling on their government to suspend a tax on flights. They say it will help the industry recover from the CCP virus pandemic. Airlines UK said on Monday that the government should waive air passenger duty, or APD, for 1 year to save routes and up to 8,000 jobs. The industry has been hit by virus-related slowdowns and is already facing over 30,000 job cuts in Britain. The government has helped with employment support schemes and loans, but has offered nothing specific for air travel companies. Airline UK says that APD relief would boost passenger demand by around 12% over the next year. APD can add $16 to an economy ticket and over $215 to some long-haul business class tickets. To Europe, 27 EU leaders continued their summit for the 4th day. Negotiations on a massive recovery package are now entering the crucial phase. The Marathon Summit in Brussels began on Friday. 3-day and nights intense discussion resulted in no deal so far.
We're entering now in a crucial phase, but I have the impression that European leaders really want an agreement.
Tensions heightened Saturday evening when German Chancellor Merkel and French President Macron got up and walked out. In the small hours of Monday, diplomats said Macron lost patience again.
I am starting today with a lot of determination and will to make progress with our colleagues, and again to share this European ambition we need.
At stake is almost $2 trillion to help European nations recover from the pandemic. But countries are at odds over how much of the package should be grants and how much should be loans. Some leaders want conditions attached to the funding like rule of law and economic and democratic reforms. And France, wearing a mask in an enclosed space is now compulsory in France. Those without them are facing fines.
Monday marked a new phase in France's efforts to combat the CCP virus. Enclosed spaces are now on the list of places where mask wearing is mandatory. People failing to comply will be hit with a fine of $154. Shoppers have been following the new rules.
For me, it makes absolutely no difference because I've worn one in enclosed spaces since the end of lockdown.
I'm not against it, like I said. If someone tells me to put one on, I'll put one on. But I wouldn't do it of my own accord, that's for sure.
Police were out in force checking to see if people have been complying. At an outdoor market in western France, the order was being enforced by a temporary checkpoint.
Masks were already compulsory in public transport, but the new rule was rushed in amid fears of a second wave. Over 30,000 people have died from the CCP virus in France. As lockdowns gradually come to an end, Parisians are finding new ways to relax. Drive-in cinemas are popular, but a floating cinema on the Seine might be even more exciting.
During the past weekend, Parisians were able to board 38 electric boats and watch a free movie. Each boat can seat up to 6 people who know each other. Others watch from deck chairs as the screen floats on the Seine.
Having a movie screen set up on the Seine is just incredible, and it's a great way to launch the summer.
Organisers hope to hold similar showings during the 6-week Paris Plage festivities. Paris Plage is an annual event that transforms sections of the River Seine into man-made beaches. Beyond sand beaches and views of central Paris's architecture, the city offers fencing, giant table football and open-air gyms. This year, the tighter health restrictions have limited some of the activities.
That's all from the NTD UK newsroom for today. Back over to New York.
Thanks, Neil. A larger-than-life Marx and Engels statue in Berlin attracts tourists, but also controversy. We asked residents and visitors how they feel about it. NTD's Germany correspondent Christian Watchen reports.
Tourists have returned to Berlin. Among the city's sights, one brings up more mixed feelings than the rest. A statue of socialist revolutionaries Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. The communist East German regime installed the larger-than-life statues in the 1980s. It was the centerpiece of the Marx-Engels Forum, a park in the political center of East Berlin. The monument was meant to demonstrate the claim to power and assumed inevitability of the socialist system. Since the reunification in 1990, the people of Berlin have been debating what to do with the statue. One minister suggested disposing of it, removing it from its central location and placing it at a Berlin graveyard, where many socialists and communists are buried. A backlash ensued. Some Berlin citizens still feel strongly about it.
The memorial, it should stay here. We grew up with it. I can't think it away, and it should be kept.
Among a worldwide debate on how to deal with historical statues, Marx is often left out of the discussion. Critics point out that many of his writings show anti-Semitic and racist views. Additionally, victims of communist regimes remind us that he shares responsibility for an ideology that has killed at least 100 million people worldwide. In Germany, more than 50 squares and over 500 streets still bear Marx's name. One former Berlin mayor suggested keeping the statue, but diffusing any propaganda value it carries. In fact, protesters have placed stickers on Marx's and Engels' foreheads with a message trying to undo just that. Some say it could serve as a historical record of the evils of communism.
I think it's important to keep it in our heads, in our minds, what was happening in the past, and I don't see any symbol behind that we are celebrating some bad times.
And others say context and commentary is crucial so visitors can better learn from the past. It is important that they are contextualized and that they are historicized, that they are commented on. It's not a matter of worship, but of a reflective, broken relationship with history. A Europe-wide competition for developing the park will start soon. That will finally decide the fate of the statue. Reporting by Christian Watchin, NTD News, Berlin.
Up next, river cruises are making a quiet comeback on the Danube. Find out how it's different from a normal cruising year when we return. River cruises are making a quiet comeback on the Danube after the CCP virus pandemic brought global tourism to a standstill and forced companies to suspend voyages.
Holiday makers are adapting to strict new safety measures aboard elegant ships. Germany's Nico Cruises were the first to restart Danube trips in June. The company operates 3 vessels on trips from Germany to Hungary, passing scenic hills and old castles along the way.
We just wanted to go on a cruise, and this seemed to be safe enough. I don't think they booked the boat fully. I think there's still some cabins that they left open so that it's safer, and then we have to wear masks when moving. So yeah, it seems like it's a safe experience.
Passengers have to take a blood test before they board. In dining areas, tables are placed well apart with dividing screens, and waiters wear masks and gloves. Guests have their temperatures checked daily. Cruise director Alexander Steiner said the Nicovision was operating at around 70% capacity. In a normal year, it would be up to 90%.
Our guests come mostly from German-speaking countries, so Germany and Austria. Of course, we also have groups who come from the UK, USA, Israel, Sweden. Although currently, as you know, it is difficult to get them into the country to start the voyage.
Passengers said the main thing they missed from previous cruises was the buffet breakfast. And the main difference was that they're required to wear masks when moving around on board.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Just why do we see so many support dogs on planes these days? And how is this a window into a much broader phenomenon? Why does Adam Carolla think emotion and woke culture have overtaken logic and reason in America? And why does everything nowadays seem to revolve around President Trump? In this episode, we sit down with comedian Adam Carolla, host of The Adam Carolla Show. He's a New York Times bestselling author, and his newest book is titled, I'm Your Emotional Support Animal, Navigating Our All-Woke, No-Joke Culture. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek.
Chinese authorities admit the Three Gorges Dam has moved, leaked, and distorted. That on the same day the dam saw its most severe flooding of the year. Wartime status is declared in Xinjiang's capital city amid an outbreak of the virus. All neighborhoods are locked down with transportation suspended. A possible cover-up has been revealed. Drone footage appears to show Uyghur Muslims from Xinjiang bound and blindfolded and being led onto a train with an unknown destination. China's ambassador to the UK was shown this footage, and his response has gone viral online. News about a potential travel ban on Chinese Communist Party members to the U.S. made the Chinese words for quit CCP become popular on Google search term trends. And over 600 U.S. and worldwide lawmakers and officials condemned the Chinese regime for its crackdown on practitioners of Falun Gong. July 20th marks the 21st year since the CCP began its persecution of the spiritual group. Tune in at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time and tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time to watch the full China in Focus.